Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Ball and All podcast, where we provide all things basketball related. But for now, because we're in Africa, we've got the Basketball Africa League happening, so I've decided to do a Basketball Africa League daily recap. We've been doing it for 2 seasons now, and that's what it is. If you're wondering who I am, my name is Mpho. You can find me on Twitter as well as on Instagram at Mpho, and also subscribe to my YouTube channel. But it is Basketball Africa League 2022. It is the Ball Daily Recap. And so what we're doing now, because it's finals week, we've got semi-finals going along. And so we had two semi-finals happening, and in that there was some really great basketball being played. One was a repeat of the final, the last year's final. The other was a team that finished third, and another team that came through through the core playoffs last year, but never made it through. So it was quite interesting to see how it was going to go. And so that's what this week is. We've got finals on the third and fourth place playoff on Saturday, and we've also got the finals on Sunday. So it's going to be quite interesting to see how that is going to go. But first semi-final, it was Petro de Luanda who beat AS Saleh of Morocco to get through, and FAP of Cameroon, who beat Reg, who were the number one seed in the Sahara Conference. They came and beat them. And FAP was like the number 4 seed in the Nile Conference. They came through. They played. It was a battle because these two teams played again earlier on in the season. There was a 12-point game between Petro and FAP. Petro won by 12 points. And you got a similar feel to that first game. Petro with a little bit of quality, a little bit more style and efficiency in terms of their scoring and the quality that they have in terms of players like Dundal, Jean and Pedro. You got Carlos Moraes. He didn't have a great game. He scored 5 points, 1 for 7 from the field, but Dundal controlled the game from front to end. He scored 18 points and 4 rebounds and 4 assists. He was really good today. Jean and Pedro came through for them. He hasn't had a very quiet Basketball Africa League. He scored 14 points, and obviously Moreira, who was their signing from the previous season, he came through. He's their center, Yannick Moreira. He came through 12 points, and we also get Gonzalez 13 points. Better 3-point shooting side. They actually scored one more 3-point shot than FAP. FAP just never had it. I think FAP, Deshaun Mormon only scored 0 points, and that was just disappointing because you needed him to come through. He played 16 minutes, couldn't score a bucket, and that kind of set them back. He only took 2 shots. That was disappointing. Brice Bidias, who was really good in the Sahara Conference for FAP, he came through. He scored 14 points, but it was the bench guys who came through. Cedric Kenfak scored 13 points. Toko, who scored 11 points. But there wasn't much from the starters, and that's where this game was broken up. I think the two benches kind of nullified each other, but the starters really gave Petro de Luanda a lead that they were never going to look back on. You kind of felt like FAP kept themselves in it, and you would say, commend them for trying to keep the game tight and trying to keep themselves within a few scores, because essentially when you're 12, 14 points like this, you just need one turnover and that becomes 6 points and you're back in, you're under double digits. And that's what they were trying to do the whole way through. But the better defensive team, the better offensive team was Petro de Luanda. They really did well in that, and they came through really well. The stat that was telling, 20 points in the paint. It was really easy for Petro de Luanda to get inside. Childo Dundal, short as he is, he was just cutting through, slicing through that key, scoring at the basket at will. As I've always said throughout it, FAP doesn't have a presence at the rim, and that kind of came through today because Jean and Pedro, so did Gaku, the two big men for Petro de Luanda, and then the bench guy, Yannick Moreira. They put down points. Then Gaku, put down 8. And you always have Moreira on 14 and João Pedro, Moreira on 12 and João Pedro on 14. That's kind of where this game was done. It was done at the rim. FAP shot better from 3. It's just they didn't shoot enough. And that's what you kind of felt like they were left to do. And it was one of those situations where Pedro, being the team that's been here before, or in this period before former African champs, they knew what they needed to do. They knew that they fell at the last hurdle last year against Zamalek, and they wanted to make sure that this time they were going to go all the way, and they did. They're going to play in the final on Sunday. That's going to be quite interesting to see against a team that we're going to talk about later on, because I think their styles really are contrasting, but we'll see how that goes. And Fab played in the third and fourth place playoff on a Saturday, so they're not done yet. The second semi-final, that was US Monastir. They did really well against, or they played against Zamalek. They won finally, because this was a repeat of last year's final, and Monastir did a great job in bringing Zamalek, in beating Zamalek this time. Zamalek had a 13-game win streak that was killed. It was a 12-game win streak coming into this game. 13 could not happen. It was 12-1 now for them. Zamalek started off slowly, similar to their quarterfinal against Slack. Zamalek weren't shooting well. They have a 36% field goal percentage this time. Last time it was 32. Remember, I said 32 doesn't win you games. 36 field goal percentage does not win you many games, compared to the 42 from Monastir. They weren't doing quite well. Both teams defended really well, but Monastir were much better. They had five steals compared to one, 7 steals compared to one, 5 blocks compared to one for Zamalek, and that was the foundation of this win. There was a point where in the first quarter, Monastir started off well. They were shooting really well. Then the Zamalek defense was clamping down. They just didn't give anything at the rim. You felt that Monastir were not giving Atemajok enough balls inside, and not even for him to post up and score, but to just get a touch inside, make the defense collapse, and then maybe see if there's open shooters. That happened in the second half for Monastir, where Atemajok was now more involved, and it got a little bit better. It was a lot of system buckets from Monastir, where Zamalek in the half court, they just came down. It was either Sosa, it was McKinney, and there was one screen, and that was it. Someone would try drive, or even end up shooting a three that was contested. Or on the other end, a lot of their offense, and I think Will Boyd, if he wants to go back and look at the film, he'll see that on offense they were overloaded on the one side most of the times, and so they'd even use the overload. And that's the problem I had with Zamalek's offense. It was stale. It needed a little bit more oomph. Maybe maybe because they played a lot of basketball, they were tired. But Monastir also played a lot of basketball, but it lacked creativity. Edgar Sosa tried. He came out with 19 points. McKinney came out with 26 points. Diogo with 11. He was shooting very well from the corner three. But you had Mohamed Anas, who's their guy. Mahmoud Anas, he's their guy. He only scored 9 points. He wasn't there defensively, and I think it was probably one of the strategies to try and move the ball, get Anas out the key, and then see what you can get. Faraz Layani is a really great player off the bench. He really did well. Solo Diabate with some sick baskets, some really important baskets. Solo Diabate, remember, he played for Zamalek last year, and he was back in again this year. But it was that third quarter, 23 points Monastir scored, and I think Zamalek only scored, I think, about 16. They came back. I thought at halftime, with Zamalek not shooting that well, being up by 5 points, that maybe they were going to control the game like they did in the final. Once they got in the lead in the final, yes, there were a few more runs, but Zamalek were largely in control in that final. Whereas now, you felt that they could have, but they didn't, and they never got there. As there was a massive run in that third quarter. It was a Slimane and Dixon show who both put on 16 points in that third quarter, and that was what kind of opened up this game a lot. There were 24 fast break points for Monastir. That is something that Zamalek needed to look at. A lot of transition buckets for Monastir, where at the end of it all, Zamalek looked very tired in that fourth quarter, and they just couldn't muster up one final rally and one final run to try and make it a little bit tight for Monastir, who weren't having the best of games, but they were having an okay enough game to get them into the final, and that's what they needed. And so we have a Monastir Petro de Luanda final. We're going to have a new champion of Basketball Africa League 2022, because the defending champions have been beaten, and this is the last time we're going to see the defending champions until probably 2024, because Al Ahly in the Egyptian League won the Egyptian League, and so now you have a situation where Al Ahly will be playing in BAL 2023, and Zamalek will not be featuring next year. So it'll be a year hiatus for Will Voigt and his team. We'll see what Zamalek looks like if they do come back, if they'll regain the Egyptian championship. But until then, it's been great to have the champions. Now, obviously, they're going to relinquish the champions tag to either the losing finalists of last year, Monastir, and the third place team of last year, Petro de Luanda, who've done enough to get themselves into the final, into the big dance. And that's what it's going to be. It's a final between Monastir and Luanda. Interesting teams. One team, very good from the perimeter, and that's Petro de Luanda. The other team, Monastir, capable from the perimeter. Sliman, Layani, a lot of the guys, Solo Diabate, they can shoot. Dixon can shoot really, really well. But what Monastir is a team that comes inside. They are a team that plays inside the paint, and they're going to have to use Atem Majok. He's a dominant force. Nobody can stop him. We've seen it last season when they played each other. Jean and Pedro didn't have enough of an answer, but Petro de Luanda fixed their issues from last year in terms of getting big men inside. Now they've got John and Pedro some help. Yannick Moreira is a really great center, so that's going to be quite an interesting battle inside the key. But then obviously outside, and I think it's gonna go down to the better defenses. I think Monastir has not much better, but a better defense than Petro de Luanda. And I think Petro de Luanda, and scrubs on defense, they really work on defense. But the thing about Petro's offense is that they move the ball. They move, they cut, they pass. They are so good. They've been here before multiple times in African championships, and they'll be wanting to take blood. This is a really good matchup. We're going to see some great basketball coming through. You got a question, obviously, with Monastir coming out of the match against Zamalek. Will they be tied? They've also played a lot of games. Zamalek played a lot of games coming up to Kigali. Monastir also, they won the Tunisian league, so they might just be tied. They just hope that they get their heads in and they've got focus. If it goes down to the bench, it's going to be quite interesting to see, because I think Petro have a better bench than Monastir. But you've got some game breakers in Solo Diabate and also Faris Layani, who can run the floor, and they run it really well and from a transition perspective. And that's what Monastir are going to be looking for, turning defense into offense, a lot of blocks at the rim, a lot of steals, whereas Petro de Luanda are going to try and switch on everything. They're going to try and move, make Monastir take that contested three, take that hard shot, and see whether they can come out from there. But it's going to be really, really awesome. You've got that firepower from Luanda against that dogged defense from Monastir in that final. Please do enjoy that. I'll be back probably on Monday to discuss the third and fourth place playoff as well as the final. Up until then, enjoy the finals weekend for Basketball African League 2022. It's been a great time bringing you all of this. Please remember to follow me on Twitter as well as on Instagram, Mpho. Outside of that, subscribe to the YouTube channel of Ball and All Podcast. All I have to say is goodbye and lesale kakafiso.